Most people would assume that since humans are in fact the most highly intelligent creatures to ever walk the earth, that we would never really have to take advice from anybody else. But of course, that is not an accurate assumption, because of course we know that that is not the case. We are constantly copying ideas from Mother Nature herself, who is really an engineer and architect with billions of years of experience. In addition to natural phenomena, Mother Nature has crafted creatures that only have very specific purposes, that are not exactly a jack of all trades like humans, meaning that they are very good at doing just that one thing. So today on this podcast, our topic is termites, and more specifically the masterful engineering that goes into the ingenious heat and cooling management system that they have created, that keeps their massive homes running smoothly. And of course, how humans have implemented this technology using a process known as, of course, biomimicry. So termites, of course, they've been around for around 250 million years before even the earliest humans, even the earliest dinosaur. So it's not a surprise that with a quarter of a billion years of practice, that they must have something good to offer. So, taking a closer look into the termite mounds that this heat ventilation system takes place. Basically, there are millions of these termites living inside of these mounds, and they can be up to 10 meters high. So that's essentially like being in a skyscraper on a human scale of multiple kilometers high. And essentially inside the farm inside the mound is a giant fungus farm, which creates massive amounts of CO2. And of course, the termites need to breathe, so they, of course, are also producing lots of CO2. And it just happens that the CO2 is conveniently the air that has a higher concentration of CO2 also happens to be hotter than the surrounding air, which is going to be very convenient, as we will see in a minute here. And so, if the CO2 builds up, it would essentially kill all of the termites, and it would all be over. So how exactly do they manage it? Basically, the mound acts like a form of a giant lung. And so basically the reason why these mounds are so tall is that they have extremely large chimneys that start from close to the base of the mound where everything is going on, all the farming and everything. They go all the way to the top. And so we will get to in a second as to why they have these. So basically, down far below the chimneys, there is an extensive fungus farm, which is what they consume. And when the fungus is produced, it creates the hot air with a high concentration of carbon dioxide and methane. And so, due to the fact that this air is hot, as you probably already know, the molecules are farther apart, making it less dense than the colder air around it, which of course makes the air rise. And the only place for it to go is the chimney, so of course it exits through the chimney, leaving the cold air behind. And so, in order to keep the pressure constant, which is just a natural thing that just happens, the fresh oxygen-rich air is pulled in from the moist foraging tunnels dense with water vapor, and the process essentially repeats itself. And this air, being that it comes from the ground, is obviously much cooler than the air that is not only outside but also created by the farming process. And so the question is, how are engineers able to use biomimicry to mimic the essential functions of the termite ventilation system? The first use of this technology was in the early 90s when architect Mick Pierce from Zimbabwe was hired to design the Eastgate Center, which is an office building / shopping center. And so Pierce wanted a way around the large cost of heating and cooling plant that would, of course, be necessary for such an extensively large structure. And so he got this inspiration from watching the BBC series called Life, realizing that Mother Nature had already solved this problem. And so the structure would be made of concrete slabs and brick, which are supposed to mimic the soil in the mound. And like the soil, these two materials have a high thermal mass, meaning they can absorb heat with a very minimal change in temperature. And so, going into greater detail, Pierce figured out that he could use the 10 degrees Celsius variation to pull in the night air through the very low power vents that these are carefully placed on the first floor, of course, where the air is much less hot than up above. And these fans turn on and off just based on how much fresh air is needed in the building in addition to the cool air. So the cool air that goes through the vents on the first floor goes through vertical ducts, which replace the stale hot air in the building, and at the same time cools the concrete and brick in the ducts, which just helps cool the building in general. And so the stale air then rises and exits through the chimneys up on top of the structure. And some benefits of this natural ventilation system is that it would rarely ever need maintenance, making it more reliable and cheap. And in addition, even if the power did run out, the natural rise and fall of the air would keep ventilating the building just at a slower rate. And the best part is it is self-adjusting, since the hotter it is outside, the more air will be driven out, and vice versa. So it is actually a relatively simple system, but is in fact extremely effective and low cost. So thank you for listening, and that is all.